dignitaries, respected panelists, and all our distinguished guests present here today. It is an honor to welcome each one of you to exercise Durg Vishwas being driven by National Disaster Management Authority, an integrated symposium on understanding the role of Corps of Engineers in National Disaster Management Framework to include risk, resilience, and response within the pristine environs of College of Military Engineering, Pune. The Corps of Engineers play a vital role in disaster management, providing crucial engineering expertise and support during natural calamities and other emergencies. The deliberations during the symposium shall delve into disaster management mechanisms and improvements envisaged based on lessons learned from recent disasters at Wayanad, Silkyara Tunnel, Sikkim, and others.
The day's proceedings shall begin with the inaugural session by triggering of the event by Lieutenant General Syed Atas Khan, Param Vishesh Seva Medal, Uttam Yudh Seva Medal, Ati Vishesh Seva Medal, Sena Medal, Vishesh Seva Medal Anwar, retired member NDM. Throughout the most of his 40-year illustrious career, General Hassan has served in very turbulent environment and hotspots, from Sri Lanka to Siachen Glacier, from the northeast to Jammu and Kashmir, and in United Nations operations from Mozambique to Rwanda. He has seen it all in crucial appointments. He has been instrumental in fostering collaboration between the armed forces and civil agencies and disaster management activities, being actively involved in various initiatives to enhance disaster preparedness and response. May I request General Hassan kindly to the event. Sir.
Thank you very much. Morning and Jai Hind to everyone. And it's a great mark of respect to the ethos of the Indian Armed Forces that we are starting bang on 9 o'clock. So, General Dheeraj Seth sir, the Army Commander Southern Command, General Manoj Pandey, former Chief of the Army Staff and a former Colonel Commandant of the Corps of Engineers, Shri Rajendra Singh ji, Member and Head of Department of the NDMA, Shri Krishna Vats, Member NDMA, who is still yet to come in, he will be probably fetching in a few minutes, General Yugender Dimri, Vice Chairman of the UPSDMA, Shri Piyush Anand, DG NDRF, Lieutenant General Arvind Walia, the Engineer-in-Chief, Lieutenant General Harpal Singh, former Engineer-in-Chief, and the exercise mentor for this particular exercise, Lieutenant General Raghu Srinivasan, the Director General of the Border Roads, all the state representatives, agency specialists, the heads of institutions in this iconic city of Pune, my warmest welcome to you on behalf of the NDMA. Many thanks for being here. Personally, for me, the two domains closest to my heart are represented here. The first being the olive green uniform of the Indian Army and the Indian Armed Forces, and the second, the disaster management community. The question of getting them together and integrating them is the greatest challenge and the greatest opportunity that is here present in front of us today. What is the idea about this particular symposium? India is racing ahead in development. 2047, we hope to be Viksit Bharat. We hope to be a $5 trillion economy in the next couple of years, maybe $10 trillion, and by 2047, who knows, we will be 20 or more. Having said that, we have also got, alongside development, we have the challenge of climate change which is taking place. And as development takes place and infrastructure expands, you find the challenge of man-made disasters, something which was before you even yesterday when you were looking at what was happening in Telangana with the terrible chemical disaster which has taken the better part of almost 39 lives. So there are all kinds of unheard disasters taking place, some things which never happened in the past. Lightning, for example. Drownings. Are you aware that 38,000 people die in India from drownings, boat tragedies? Glough, glacial lake outburst floods. besides cyclones, earthquakes, and things of that kind which we are all aware of. The whole idea behind such an event was knowledge exchange. The whole idea is that everyone has a domain specialization, but to integrate that, bring it all together into a single super domain of disaster management is the need of the hour. Ever since the professionalization of disaster management, from 2005 when the National Disaster Management Act got enacted, the NDMA got set up, and the very, very efficient organization, the NDRF, came into being with just 8 units, then 16 units today. We have gone far, far beyond. But the challenges too have exponentially increased. And the NDRF cannot be expected to be left alone to handle this. Unfortunately, a perception prevails in a lot of quarters that now with the NDRF here, the professional disaster managers, what is the requirement of any other agency, any other organization like the armed forces, to be also bearing this responsibility? I think the idea should be very clear. This, like war, which is an all-of-government event, all-of-government domain, the only other activity in which all-of-government comes into being is disaster management. So everyone who's sitting here belongs to some element of the government or outside, the community, the NGOs or the civil society organizations. So all of them have to finally come together on a knowledge exchange, bring their specialization together, put their heads to it and see. You saw the fantastic examples of Wayanad. We saw what has happened in various other domain areas like the Kashmir floods, Kedarnath, what happened in 2014, 2013, places of that kind. So, with that kind of thing in mind, the whole idea is to bring everyone together, and which better place, which better organization can do it than the Corps of Engineers, who have for years borne this responsibility on behalf of the Indian Armed Forces. Before I close, and I just want to once again compliment all of you for your presence here today, for all the distinguished people who are here with us, for taking time out to be a part of this event. I thought it's an important thing for me to also just inform you, which is something which we are doing, 2 messages of the Honorable Prime Minister of India. Number one, the Honorable Prime Minister has given out a 10-point agenda, which he gave out in 2016 at the Asian Ministerial Conference on Disaster Risk Resilience. If you go through these 10 points, which are there on the NDMA website, I can assure you, you will be that much the better off. A comprehensive understanding in a 10-point code on what disaster management demands today. The second thing which the Honorable Prime Minister has asked the armed forces, the Central Armed Police Forces, and every one of us to do is to download in your mobile the Sachet application, the app. As we go along, you will have a brief on Sachet, on the early warning systems which the NDMA has set up for you, and I will leave it for that particular explanation at that part of this event. And the last thing for me to convey is that a special disaster management award has been instituted by the Government of India, in fact by the Honorable Prime Minister himself. It's called the Subhash Chandra Bose Aapda Prabandhan Puraskar. And for the information of those in uniform, you should know that among the winners, we had in the 8th Battalion, the NDRF, being the first of the winners of this award, and subsequently 60 Parachute Field Hospital from Agra, which won this. Every year this is open to nominations. Please look at our website. The nominations for this year are open. It can be by individuals, it can be for institutions, but this is something which will recognize the worth of what you have achieved in terms of disaster management. I close here with the special thanks to the Engineer-in-Chief, in particular for having agreed to conduct this event virtually on behalf of the NDMA, but we find here that we had to do nothing. It is the CME which has done everything. So my compliments to the entire engineer community of the Indian Armed Forces. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.
Words will set the tone for the rest to follow.
Shri Rajendra Singh, prior to his appointments as HOD NDMA, was at the reins of the Indian Coast Guard from 29th February 2016 to 30th June 2019. He has the unique distinction of commanding all classes of Indian Coast Guard ships. He developed strategy and plans for firefighting on board Coast Guard ships and external firefighting support to merchant vessels in distress at sea, which were effectively utilized during successful firefighting operations at sea. I request Shri Rajendra Singh, HOD NDMA, to deliver his address.
Jai Hind and very good morning to all warriors of national resilience. It is an absolute honor to stand amidst the finest, those who build not just bridges but confidence. Those who don't just defend borders but fortify the spirit of this nation. I extend my warm greetings to Lieutenant General Dheeraj Seth, PVSM, AVSM, GOCNC, Southern Command, General Manoj Pandey, PVSM, AVSM, BSM, former Chief of the Army Staff, my colleague and friend, member in NDMA, Lieutenant General Syed Ata Hasnain, Shri Piyush Anand, IPS, DG NDRF, Lieutenant General Arvind Walia, Engineer-in-Chief, Lieutenant General Raghu Srinivasan, DG Border Roads, Lieutenant General Yogendra Dimri, retired Vice Chairman, SDMA UP, Lieutenant General Harpal Singh, former DG Border Roads, and all to every brave heart, expert, senior officer gathered here today. My gratitude to College of Military Engineers and legendary Corps of Engineers whose contribution in peace and peril are both strategic and steadfast. Your discipline, your commitment and engineering excellence are pillars of India's resilience strategy. Exercise Durg Biswas is not just a military drill. It is a strategic convergence of civil and military institutions in disaster preparedness and response. It reflects the NDMA's commitment, the whole of government and whole of society and whole of administration's approach, fostering synergy, interoperability and operational readiness across all agencies. The presence of central ministries, SDMAs, premier technical institutions like DRDO, DAE, NSD, NDRF, NRSC, and partners from private industries underscores the comprehensive nature of this initiative. The name of Durg Biswas itself is a symbolic. Durg is not just a fortress of stone. It is a sum total of preparedness, partnership, and purpose. And Biswas or trust is the currency of every successful mission, whether it is a battlefield or in disaster response. This exercise epitomizes what I call सेना और समाज, साथ, सुरक्षा और समृद्धि. The armed forces and civil institutions together for safety and prosperity. When the Corps of Engineers, NDRF, NDMA, and technical institutions, agencies join hands, we move from mere disaster response to disaster dominance. That is preparedness, precision, and partnership in action. Ladies and gentlemen, disasters today are not just natural. They are complex, cascading, and hybrid. From flood to industrial accidents, gulf to severe threats, we need more just resources, we need more readiness, that is rehearsed, coordinations that is absolutely seamless, and response that is ruthless against risk. That is where civil-military synergy shines. The Corps builds access across terrain, denies it. The NDRF brings speed where time betrays us. The NDMA provides foresight where uncertainty looms. And all technical partners, agencies infuse innovation where old method falls short. The Corps of Engineers is the sword of engineering resilience, be in building bridges under fire or restoring connectivity after flood. You are the first and in last out in many crisis zones, be it Bhuj earthquake, be it Wayanad flood, Wayanad landslide, be in Sikkim Gulf, or maybe in Kerala floods, or severe emergencies. Your ability to deliver technical precision under pressure, from terrain clearance to infrastructure restoration, places you at the core of India's disaster response framework. Together, we become India's rapid resilience force, unified, adaptive, and ready for any adversity. Today's workshop isn't about repeating textbook protocol. Our mission is clear. Breaking silos, building system. How can NDMA, BRO, NDRF, and Corps of Engineers, not as an isolated unit, but as an integrated response architecture? Terrain to technology, from Sikkim glacier threats to urban collapse, from remote sensing to AI-driven early warning, we decode how new age tools can empower boots on the ground. CBRNE, the unseen battlefield, chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, and explosive hazard demands a new doctrine of deterrence and defense. Our deliberation today must chart that course. And very important is from case study to combat readiness. Real world operation be like AP floods, Wayanad landslide, Raigad landslide, industrial mishap, and Sikkim Gulf must translate into a sharper drill, a strong SOP, and a smarter response. I urge all the participants to engage fully with exhibitions and field demonstrations. These are more than displays. They are living laboratories of knowledge, innovations, and tactical coordinations. Let me distill today's message into three rhythmic takeaways designed for action and for leadership. My first point will be सेना और समाज एक संकल्प एक संकट में. Army and society, one resolve, one response. Because we have seen 99 Paradeep cyclone where we have lost 13,000 men. We have seen Bhuj earthquake, more than 14,000 men. Tsunami, more than 10,000 people we have lost. And today we are in 2025. Let me tell you one thing, the cyclone Fani, cyclone Biparjoy, not a single mortality, single death has taken place. That is our preparations. So we have to come together. Maybe it is a whole of government, whole of system, and whole of society. We have to work in one force, one platform. तो सेना और समाज एक संकल्प एक संकट में. Disaster test not just system but our unity. Civil military coordination isn't optional, it is operational necessity. Less institutionalized synergy, not improvise it under crisis. My second point will be technology से तेजी, training से तैयारी. Technology for speed, training for readiness. At GIS, remote sensing, they amplified speed, but without joint details and cross-domain familiarizations, technology is just hardware without heart. And my third point will be resilience, बनाए रक्षा, preparedness बनाए विजय. From building resilient infrastructure to community preparedness, every layered defense reduces disasters, damage, and strengthens national victory over vulnerability. These three tenets must guide us not just today but every day. Finally, disaster management today is not a support function. It is a national security priority. It requires military precision, civil participation, and institutional courage. Let us reaffirm our collective commitment to protect life, livelihood, infrastructure, and national integrity with unity of purpose and clarity of mission. Let us place that Durg Vishwas won't remain an event. It will evolve into an enduring model of preparedness, partnership, and national protection. Let me conclude with a very meaningful two lines by famous Shair. He said, सरहदें फौलादी हों या मुश्किल हालात, सरहदें फौलादी हों या मुश्किल हालात, जो डटे हैं मोर्चे पे वही है मुल्क की बात. Whether it is the iron-clad borders or trying times, those who stand guard are the true essence of this nation. In this context of disaster management, it reminds us the preparedness and resilience are our new age frontline. And every agency that contributes is a soldier in the service of this nation. Thank you very much for patiently listening.
Thank you, sir, for your valuable insights. Your vision and leadership will surely guide our discussions today. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my proud privilege to introduce the chief guest of the seminar, Lieutenant General Dheeraj Seth, Param Vishesh Seva Medal, Ati Vishesh Seva Medal, General Officer Commanding Chief, Southern Command. Commissioned into the second Masters in December 1986, the General Officer has commanded an armored regiment, an armored brigade, a counter-insurgency force in Jammu and Kashmir, a strike corps, and a prestigious Delhi area. The General Officer was also General Officer Commanding Chief, Southwestern Command, prior to his taking over of the present appointment as the 51st General Officer Commanding Chief of Southern Command on 1st July 2024. Ladies and gentlemen, the address by the Chief Guest of the seminar. Sir.
Thank you. General Manoj Pandey, former Chief of Army Staff, Shri Rajendra Singh, Member and Head of Department, the NDMA, Lieutenant General Syed Atta Hasnain, Member NDMA, Lieutenant General Harpal Singh, the former ENC, Lieutenant General Yogendra Dimri, Vice Chairperson, Uttar Pradesh SDMA, Lieutenant General Arvind Walia, the ENC, Lieutenant General Raghu Srinivas, the DGBR, Mr. Piyush Anand, the DG NDRF, and the Commandant CME, General Ramesh, who actually has been at it behind all this to make it happen for this morning today. Apart from them, we have all participants here present from the DRDO, the Department of Atomic Energy, NDRF, state disaster management authorities, industry, colleagues in uniform, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning. It's an indeed honor for me to be here amongst this distinguished gathering at the integrated symposium focused on the role of the Corps of Engineers with our National Disaster Management Framework. The increasing scale and complexity of disasters demands a robust, technology-enabled, and seamlessly coordinated response. The Corps of Engineers has consistently demonstrated its ability to deliver under pressure, bridging gaps, restoring connectivity, and enabling life-saving operations. With participation of institutions like the DRDO, the DAE, the NDRF, state DMAs, NSG, and industry present today, exercise Durg Vishwas truly reflects the importance of understanding and integrating the unique capabilities of the Corps of Engineers within the broader National Disaster Management Framework, reinforcing our collective commitment to preparedness and resilience. Disaster management has increasingly emerged as a subject of critical national importance. Over the past decade, the scale and frequency of natural disasters have visibly intensified, whether they be floods, cyclones, earthquakes, and landslides. They are no longer sporadic events, but recurring disruptions with serious national consequences. The floods in Assam, the landslides in Himachal and Wayanad, the cloudbursts in Uttarakhand, and the cyclones along both the coasts are stark reminders of this growing challenge. These events have not only caused extensive human suffering, but have also disrupted economic activity, destroyed critical infrastructure, and placed immense pressure on state and district administrations. India suffered economic losses of over $12 billion in the previous year, well above the previous 10-year average, which was $8 billion. For the armed forces, and particularly the Indian Army, this evolving landscape of natural disasters has significant implications. Disaster relief is no longer an episodic task. It has become an operational reality that must be planned for, trained for, and seamlessly executed. The increasing civil-military interface in disaster response reflects this very shift. Given the vast footprint of the Indian Army across the length and breadth of our country, it is often the best positioned to respond swiftly and effectively, often becoming the first responders when civilian capacity is overwhelmed, and therefore the importance of Indian Army in all disaster management responses. Within this framework, the Corps of Engineers has emerged as a critical enabler. Their ability to restore mobility, build temporary infrastructure, assess structural damage, and support evacuation and shelter operations has proven invaluable. Whether it was bridging broken links in Wayanad, or the enabling the urban flood relief in Pune, or supporting India's international humanitarian outreach during Operation Brahma in Myanmar, military engineers have consistently demonstrated exceptional versatility, demonstrated technical proficiency, and professional competence in some of the most demanding and high-pressure environments. Last year at Wayanad, like most of us here seated are aware, the Engineer Task Force comprising of 200 personnel worked incessantly to erect a 130 feet long Bailey's Bridge in less than 48 hours, which included airlifting the bridge from Delhi to connect the affected towns of Churalmala and Bandakai village. This bridge remains even deployed today in the area as a lifeline for those villagers, and an engineer team ex-Southern Command continues to provide periodic assistance for its maintenance. More recently, the Air India AI-171 crash at Ahmedabad highlighted the Army's swift disaster response. Within minutes, we had over 150 personnel from the military station, comprising engineers, medical, firefighting and QRTs that were mobilized. The General Officer commanding of the division based at Ahmedabad himself was at the crash site within minutes. In fact, the prompt decision taken of breaching the wall which was there between the military hospital at Ahmedabad and the BJ Medical College, which was struck by the aircraft which crashed, actually proved to be most, in fact, if I can say, really helped in saving precious lives of all those that were trapped within the BJ Medical Complex. Today, disaster management are not just humanitarian concerns, they are core national security issues, and therefore, to my mind, responding to disasters has become an operational imperative. Southern Command, with its vast area of responsibility covering nearly 41% of India's landmass, which includes states from Rajasthan, Maharashtra, Gujarat, and the entire of peninsular India, encompasses diverse and disaster-prone terrain such as long coastlines, mountainous regions, flood-prone rivers, and zones vulnerable to earthquakes, cyclones, and landslides. This geographic spread has endowed the command with extensive experience in coordinating with the NDRF and state disaster management authorities for a wide spectrum of HADR missions. Disaster-prone areas, in fact, have been mapped across Southern Command, and as I speak, we have today over 200 HADR columns that are earmarked and kept ready to cater for this vast area of responsibility. Each of these columns are augmented with an engineer task force. Last year, we had over 30 HADR columns which were deployed across various disaster relief operations, with the sappers of Southern Command playing a pivotal role in each one of them. These actions go well beyond technical execution. They restore public confidence, bring order amidst chaos, and reflect the Army's ability to respond swiftly and effectively in the times of crisis. To sustain and strengthen this growing role in disaster response, it is essential that we focus our attention to building robust capacities, both material and institutional, that allow for faster, more coordinated, and more effective actions across the board. The Army is in the process of acquiring HADR bricks, which have been standardized into 6 categories and are being centrally procured. Southern Command will be getting 5 such bricks, each tailored to address specific requirements during disaster relief operations. Custody and maintenance of these would be the responsibility of the sappers. The introduction of these standardized HADR bricks will significantly enhance both capability and capacity as they ensure immediate availability of mission-critical equipment during the crucial first 24 to 48 hours of a disaster, reducing reliance on ad hoc arrangements. Further, it is important to strengthen institutional collaboration with the NDRF, the SDRF, and state disaster management authorities. Building on the growing synergy seen during joint HADR operations, our next step is to formalize pre-disaster coordination mechanisms. This includes structured planning conferences, joint standard operating procedures, and integration of response drills into annual calendars. Regular interaction at the operational and planning levels will foster mutual understanding, enhance interoperability, and ensure that each stakeholder is fully aware of the capabilities and expectations of the others. Proactive engagements like Exercise Durg Vishwas will go a long way enabling faster, more cohesive, and more efficient disaster response efforts. In fact, towards this end, I wish to acknowledge the commendable efforts of Janlata Hasnain in promoting preparedness and jointness through seminars and multi-agency engagements like Exercise Durg Vishwas. His initiatives have brought key stakeholders together, enhanced interoperability, and fostered a unified approach to disaster management, bridging institutional silos and advancing our collective resilience. As part of Southern Command's initiative to institutionalize military-civil synergy, we have a foreign training node here at OND in Pune itself, and it was basically being used for foreign training. We've expanded the scope to call it as a military-civil fusion training node. And this transformation is aimed at fostering structured engagements between the armed forces and the civil agencies. Regular joint training and simulation exercises are being conducted here at this node to enhance interoperability and build integrated response capabilities. Encouraged by the success here at ON, similar military-civil fusion nodes and training frameworks are being planned across various other stations across Southern Command. In fact, during my recent interaction that I had with the Honorable Chief Minister of Maharashtra, the importance of strengthening this disaster relief coordination was a key focus area of our discussions, and therefore it's our shared commitment to evolve a unified, responsive disaster management ecosystem. Moreover, a similar exercise of reaching out to all the 11 chief ministers which Southern Command interacts with is already underway and in the pipeline. I also wish to highlight that disaster management cannot be seen solely as the responsibility of government institutions. Based on our experience on the ground, it is clear that communities are often the true first responders. Their actions in the initial moments of a crisis, before any agency can even be mobilized, makes a critical difference between loss and survival. That is why building resilience at the grassroots level is most essential. Awareness, preparedness, and participation by the local population must be woven into the broader disaster response framework. Regular education drives, community drills, and joint training with civil agencies help ensure quicker recovery and more effective coordination. From a military standpoint, we have seen time and again that when the people are informed and prepared, response efforts become smoother, faster, and more impactful. Involving citizens fosters a culture of shared responsibility, collective vigilance, and national resilience, a force multiplier in every sense of the word. To conclude, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to reiterate that in today's complex and dynamic disaster landscape, it is increasingly clear that no single agency can mount an effective response alone. What is required is a whole-of-nation approach, which has been spoken of both by the earlier two speakers, one that brings together the combined strengths of the armed forces, civil administration, technical institutions, private industry, and most importantly, the people. This approach must span the entire spectrum, from risk reduction and early warning to immediate response, rehabilitation, and long-term resilience. The Corps of Engineers stands out as a vital contributor in this integrated framework. Their expertise goes far beyond conventional tasks, whether it is restoring connectivity after floods or landslides, constructing relief infrastructure after earthquakes, or supporting evacuation in cyclone-affected areas. The sappers have consistently demonstrated professionalism under pressure. Exercise Durg Vishwas is a meaningful step towards strengthening our national disaster management framework. By bringing together domain experts, field practitioners, planners, and institutional leaders, it helps shape a more cohesive, responsive, and resilient disaster management architecture. I wish this integrated symposium meaningful deliberation, actionable outcomes, and enduring collaborations. Southern Command remains committed to supporting every effort that strengthens HADR preparedness and builds a safer, stronger India for the future. Thank you, and Jai Hind.
Thank you so much for your valuable work. And now I invite the Rajendra Singh, SK NDA to the stage, trying to present a memento. Thank you, sir.
It is my personal honor to introduce our next speaker. Commissioned into the Bombay Sappers in December 1982, General Manoj Pandey, Param Vishisht Seva Medal, Ati Vishisht Seva Medal, Vishisht Seva Medal, retired, former Chief of Army Staff, has held prestigious command and staff assignments in conventional as well as counter-insurgency operations in all types of terrain. He has commanded an engineer brigade in the Western Theatre, an infantry brigade along the line of control, a mountain division in Western Ladakh, and a corps in the Northeast. The general officer was also GOCNC, Eastern and Andaman and Nicobar commands prior to being appointed as the 29th Chief of Army Staff. At present, he is actively involved in knowledge sharing at academic institutions, think tanks, and corporate houses on a variety of subjects. Sir, the college is honored to welcome you back to your alma mater. May I now request General Manoj Pandey to deliver his address.
General State, the GOCNC Southern Command, General Hasnain, Sri Rajendra Singh, members NDMA, the ENC, DGBR, DG NDRF, Commandant NDA, Commandant CME, senior veterans present here, distinguished panelists, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and Jai Hind. It's an honor for me to address you today on a very important and a subject of immense value, and I wish to thank the NDMA for giving me an opportunity to speak. India, with its vast geography, diverse industrial landscape, and vulnerability to various hazards, is no stranger to natural calamities and man-made disasters. From recurring floods, devastating earthquakes, cyclones, landslides, and industrial disasters, we have learned, often at great cost, the imperative of robust disaster management and the need for seamless synergy, integration, and coordination between various agencies and stakeholders. The NDMA, at the very heart of India's disaster management framework, has provided the strategic oversight as an essential structure within which all the stakeholders operate. Its role is pivotal in policy formulation and planning, coordination and integration, capacity building and training, resource allocation and monitoring, and issuance of guidance and SOPs. Our defense forces, while primarily tasked with national security, possess inherent capabilities that make them an invaluable asset in disaster management. And this assistance comprises rapid deployment and logistics, medical support, engineering and infrastructure restoration, providing aviation assets for aerial surveys, airlifting stranded people, and transporting critical supplies. It is often debated whether the armed forces should develop specific capability, that is, hold specialist equipment and train to undertake HADR operations, more so after the raising of NDRF and SDRF. It is my view that it is not an either-or situation. I believe that this can be done both without losing focus on our primary role or primary task. Being the most versatile arm of the Indian Army, living up to its motto of Sarvatra, and with penchant for improvisation and innovation, the Corps of Engineers is uniquely placed in being at the forefront of HADR operations undertaken by the armed forces. Ready availability of dual-use equipment and stores, such as for flood relief, carrying out earth-moving tasks, rescue operations, combined with the skill sets that its personnel possess, make the Corps ideally suited for disaster management tasks. Another unique feature of the Corps is its expertise and capabilities in the field of chemical, biological, and nuclear incidents. We have also witnessed noteworthy contributions by the BRO and MES in all stages of disaster management. I believe the Corps brings with it the unique combination of technical expertise, logistic capability, and military discipline, qualities that are vital in times of crisis. Its contributions span all 4 stages of disaster management. At the preparedness stage, the Corps contributes to planning and conducting simulation exercises alongside civilian authorities such as this. Their inputs are critical in terrain assessment, flood modeling, and infrastructure vulnerability analysis, particularly in border and remote areas. As part of disaster response, the Army and the Corps has been deploying flood relief columns of clearing roads after landslides and restoring communication networks after earthquakes. Post-disaster, in the recovery stage, the Corps has not only been constructing temporary shelters and critical infrastructure repairs, but also providing technical assessments and advice for long-term reconstruction effort. In a preventive role, as part of the mitigation stage, the Corps can work in synergy with state and national agency, particularly in designing embankments, constructing flood barriers, and strengthening critical military civil infrastructure in high-risk zones. I believe technology must be at the forefront of our disaster management strategy. We must invest further in cutting-edge meteorological forecasting, hazard mapping, seismic monitoring, and real-time industrial hazard detection. Technologies such as AI and satellite imagery need to be fully integrated and scaled to provide granular, geo-targeted alerts direct to communities. Predictive models for disaster pathways, incorporating hyper-local weather data and risk scores will be crucial. Drones can be used for rapid damage assessment and delivery of essential supplies in inaccessible areas. The use of AI-powered chatbots for emergency communication and 3D printing for critical component repair can revolutionize response and recovery. While effective response is critical, our focus must increasingly shift towards prevention and mitigation. This includes enforcing stricter building codes, especially in earthquake-prone zones, and ensuring robust safety protocols and infrastructure within the chemical industry. For continuous capacity building, regular multi-agency mock drills are essential. Specialized training for chemical disaster response, comprising decontamination procedures and medical protocols for chemical exposure, must remain a constant endeavor. We need to continuously train and equip our civil defense volunteers, NDRF, SDRF personnel, and the defense forces with latest skills and equipment. The private sector, with its technological expertise, logistic capabilities, and innovative solution, can be a powerful ally in disaster management. Collaboration with tech companies, logistic providers, and even local industries can significantly enhance our preparedness and response capabilities. The CME has a well-established and a fully functional faculty of CBRN protection, which trains personnel of the 3 services. It could be designated as a center of excellence for dealing with CBRN disasters and contingencies. It could also coordinate research, plan for specialist higher learning, and be the single point of contact for engaging with academia and industry on subjects related to disaster management. Let me touch upon some key policy issues where a deeper civil-military coordination can significantly enhance our disaster resilience. While NDRF and SDRF have evolved over time, I feel a formally structured inclusion of the Army and the Corps of Engineers into NDMA contingency planning and drills will ensure rapid deployment and smoother interoperability. You will agree with me that disasters often disrupt civil communication and governance systems. In such cases, the Army's command structure offers a ready fallback. However, clearly defined jurisdictional protocols, especially in dual command zones, must be pre-agreed to avoid delays in action. For joint capacity building, it is imperative to institutionalize joint training modules, particularly in urban rescue and chemical and biological response situations. I also believe that our ex-servicemen are a valuable asset and can be meaningfully co-opted in this effort. Disaster management must shift from reactive relief to proactive resilience. In this endeavor, the Corps of Engineers is not only a responder but a strategic asset in building long-term national capacity and must be seen not just as an emergency recourse but as a permanent partner in resilience planning. In disaster management, the best response is not necessarily the fastest. It is in fact the most coordinated, prepared and anticipatory. The Indian Army and the Corps of Engineers embody this principle, and their continued integration into our national framework is both a strategic necessity and a moral imperative. Before I conclude, let me say that events for knowledge sharing and ideation such as this are important to achieve better understanding of each other's capabilities, expertise, operating procedures and equipment. I urge participants in this seminar to engage actively in discussions, share valuable experiences, and contribute to developing innovative solutions. Your collective wisdom and knowledge is vital for enhancing our nation's disaster resilience and accelerate preparedness. Thank you and Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir, for your wonderful work. And now we invite General Hussain, member of NDMA, to the stage to kindly come out and present the memento. Thank you, sir. We shall now have the keynote address being delivered by the Engineer-in-Chief. Commissioned in December 1986 into the Corps of Engineers, General Arvind Balias commanded an independent squadron in the desert sector, an engineer regiment in Jammu and Kashmir, and an engineer brigade along the Western Front, besides commanding the Madras Engineer Group and Center at Bengaluru. He has served as the Chief of Staff at Quarter Southern Command prior to being appointed as Engineer-in-Chief on 1st January 2023. I now request Lieutenant General Arvind Balia, Fateh Vishesh Seva, Engineer-in-Chief, kindly deliver the keynote address. Sir.
Respected dignitaries, distinguished officers, honored guests, fellow stakeholders, ladies and gentlemen, Jai Hind and a very good morning to all of you. When you are the last speaker of a session, firstly you are under pressure of time, and secondly you are always apprehensive. Hope all your points have not already been covered by the previous speakers. So I will try and not to repeat, but whatever issues have already been covered and I talk about them, please take them that they were very important and they needed reiteration. It is both an honor and a responsibility to address this distinguished gathering of the finest minds and the most committed institutions in India's disaster management ecosystem. As Mr. Kofi Annan rightly said, disaster risk reduction is not a luxury. It is a cost-effective investment in our future. Today we are not just here to discuss hazards and disasters. We are here to reshape the national vision, to build a resilient India one that is equipped not just to respond, but to withstand, adapt, and recover swiftly and sustainably. India's geographical complexity and demographic scale makes us uniquely vulnerable. Almost 58% of our land is earthquake prone. 12% of our land is exposed to floods. More than 7,500 kilometers of our coastline lies in the path of cyclones and tsunamis. The economic losses from disasters in India now exceed 60,000 crores annually. Events such as Uttarakhand floods of 2013, Cyclone Amphan in 2020, and Balasore train tragedy are no longer outliers. They are becoming more frequent and more severe. But these are not just environmental events. These are tests of our governance, planning, and national will. Our institutional architecture to deal with disaster management, which was established under the Disaster Management Act 2005, is quite robust but still evolving. We have the NDMA at the policy and strategy formulation level. We have the NDRF with 16 battalions, which is among the world's finest rapid response force. We have the state and district disaster management authorities, which have been empowered, and we have a very robust funding mechanism which is in place. We are rightly proud of our Odisha's evacuation strategy, which was talked about earlier, which saved over 1 million lives during Cyclone Fani. These are global benchmarks set by India. But let us also reflect candidly. Only about 10% of residents in high-risk zones have received any disaster training. Urban floods and fire accidents remain recurring due to poor planning. Climate change is accelerating risks, yet risk-informed infrastructure remains limited. Local governments, especially at the panchayat and urban local bodies, often lack the capacity or resources to act. India's increasing exposure to natural disasters such as floods, earthquakes, landslides, cyclones, and industrial accidents demand an integrated and multi-domain response capability. In this context, the Corps of Engineers, with its 4 interlinked pillars, the Combat Engineers, Border Roads Organization, the Military Engineer Service, and the Military Survey, forms a strategic node in India's national disaster management grid. What is it that makes the SAPAs a unique entity? A signboard, as you all entered the lush green campus of CME says, they said you can do anything, so I became a SAPA. Often viewed through the lens of national defense, this institution possesses unique engineering, logistical, and geospatial capabilities that makes it a critical enabler for India's resilience in both peace and crisis. The Corps of Engineers bridges the divide between military utility and civilian aid, capable of rapid deployment in active war zones and equally agile in post-disaster scenarios. This flexibility gives India a scalable and reliable engineering arm, embedded with discipline, logistics autonomy, and field resilience. The 4 pillars of the Corps of Engineers, and I'm sure they are going to be talked about in the next session itself when we talk about institutional capabilities. But as head of the arm, I must say a few lines about each of these. Combat engineers, they act as the force multipliers in rapid response. They are trained to work under extreme pressure, war zones, collapsed buildings, raging rivers, and that skill set translates into unmatched performance in disaster zones. We have seen their capabilities in rapid bridge laying, debris clearance, rescue infrastructure, water and other essential service restoration, airstrip and helipad repair, which is critical for logistics in inaccessible terrain. Border road organization is strategically important for restoring mobility. Their presence in high altitude and disaster-prone zones makes it the lifeline of remote India, not only for defense but for civilian connectivity post-disaster. Their expertise lies in avalanche clearance, landslide restoration, and rapid bridge construction. Military engineer service, often forgotten in the disaster relief, is one of the largest construction agency in the government. They built about quarantine centers for more than 25,000 personnel during the COVID pandemic. They restored medical gas pipeline to almost all the military hospitals. During the tsunami in Andaman, in a very short time, all the essential services in that remote island were restored by the military engineer service. Another important aspect related to the military survey. Geospatial intelligence today is the backbone of disaster anticipation and targeted response. Military survey integrates satellite, aerial, and LIDAR data to produce high-resolution terrain models. And they had used this in both Bihar and Assam floods, where they used both UAV and satellite mapping to define relief zones. The previous speakers have talked about moving from relief-centric to resilience-centric in our disaster management approach. So what is resilience-centric? And I have 4 issues to cover in this. First is our risk-informed infrastructure. We need to urgently carry out disaster risk audit of all our public infrastructure projects. And if required, carry out retrofitting of critical facilities such as schools, hospitals, and transport nodes. We must also integrate green infrastructure like mangroves and floodplains into our overall natural-based solutions against the disasters. Second is incorporation of technology and data as force multipliers. There is an urgent requirement of expanding our forecasting coverage, establishing a real-time national disaster dashboard. General Hasnain talked about the app Sanchet. We were not aware that there is an app like this. And use AI/ML models for predictive disaster risk analysis. Empowering local communities, preparing them for disasters, including disaster preparedness education in schools, and providing dedicated funds and capacities to the local bodies is also very essential to reduce our response time. And in the last point, we must ensure state action plans on climate change are implemented at the lowest level, at the district level. We must recognize slow onset disasters like heat waves and groundwater depletion in our policy priorities and must plan for these. Disaster resilience cannot be built in silos. We need to have civil-military synergy, which is critical for our rapid response. Public-private partnership must be incentivized, especially in logistics and insurance. Technology institutions should be embedded in national response frameworks. NGOs and community-based organizations must be involved in planning, not just post-disaster charity. Let us move toward One India, One Disaster Response System, which is integrated, interoperable, and inclusive. In conclusion, let us remember, disaster management is no longer about responding to chaos. It is about shaping stability. It is time to elevate disaster resilience to a core pillar of national security, economic policy, and development planning. Let our legacy not be measured by how many disasters we responded to, but but by how many we prevented, mitigated, and were prepared for. You cannot prevent the storm, but you can build a stronger shelter. Let us commit together to building those shelters socially, institutionally, and strategically. Ladies and gentlemen, the stage is set for an important seminar on disaster management. This gathering provides a valuable opportunity to learn from experts, collaborate across sectors, and strengthen our capabilities. I encourage everyone to actively participate, exchange ideas, and commit to implementing innovative solutions for effective disaster management. I wish the seminar every success and fruitful outcomes. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir. I'm sure the direction provided by you will guide the seminar in its right earnest. I now invite Shri Piyush Anand. Shri Piyush Anand is an IPS officer of 1991 batch 1 from UP Kala. He has served as the SP SSK in 11 districts in UP. He has served in CBI, CRPF, CISF in various capacities before joining the National Disaster Response Force as DG NDRF on March 31, 2024. Sir, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, friends. General Manoj Pandey, ex-Chief of Army Staff, General Dheeraj Seth, GOC Southern Command, Shri Rajendra Singh D, HOD, Member NDMA, General Atta Hasnain, Member NDMA, General Walia, Engineer Chief, Senior Officers from Indian Army, and dear friends. जब ये मैं इस कॉन्फ्रेंस के लिए मैंने अपनी तैयारी की थी तो कुछ पॉइंट्स मैंने नोट किए थे कि भी इस पॉइंट्स को मैं फोकस करूँगा। तो जब मेरा नंबर आया बोलने का तो हर स्पीकर ने कुछ कुछ पॉइंट बोले तो वो कट होते चले गए। तो ये डायलॉग मैंने सोचा था आखिर में मैं बोलूँगा कि आखिरी स्पीकर हूँ, तो वो डायलॉग भी जनरल वालिया ने अपनी स्पीच में कट दिया। चलो माय बैड लक। देखिए, एक चीज़ हम सब लोग जानते हैं कि हमें डिज़ास्टर्स जो हैं इंडिया में बढ़ रहे हैं, इस पे हमारे में किसी का कंट्रोल नहीं है। हमारी आबादी बढ़ रही है, हम लोग जो क्लाइमेट के साथ, जो अपनी नेचुरल रिसोर्सेज के साथ जो कर रहे हैं, हम सब लोग जान रहे हैं। उस पे जो प्रेशर है हम सबको पता है। मतलब ठीक है, हम लोग हर कॉन्फ्रेंस में वो बात करते हैं, हम लोग पहाड़ों की बात करते हैं, पहाड़ों में हम एक्सपेक्ट करते हैं कि भी हमारे जितने भी तीर्थ स्थान हैं वहाँ तक हम लोग बाय रोड पहुँच जाएँ। अब रोड बनेगी तो पहाड़ कटेगा ही कटेगा। हमें अगर श्रीनगर जाना है, हम चाहते हैं लेह तक सीधी रोड बने, तो कहीं ना कहीं पहाड़ में टनल बनेगा। तो हम जितना जो नेचुरल रिसोर्सेज हैं, जो जितने इन सब फैक्टर्स को हिट कर रहे हैं, तो हम ये मान के चलें कि डिज़ास्टर्स हमारे बढ़ने हैं। दिस इज़ अ फैक्ट ऑफ लाइफ। मतलब इससे हम लोग मुंह नहीं मोड़ सकते। दूसरी चीज़, एक हम सब लोग जानते हैं, ये जो हमारी साइंटिफिक कम्युनिटी है, जितने भी हमारी फोरकास्टिंग एजेंसीज़ हैं, ये उनकी सक्सेस है। ये पहले भी स्पीकर्स ने कहा है, मैं उसी चीज़ को रिपीट करना चाहूँगा। अगर वी गो बैक, फ्लैशबैक में हम लोग जाएं, तो जो हमारे साइक्लोन्स और फ्लड्स हुआ करते थे आज से 25 साल पहले, जो उसमें लॉस ऑफ लाइफ हुआ करता था, और जो अब साइक्लोन्स हुए हैं पिछले 1-2 साल में, चाहे बिपरजॉय हो, चाहे इस साल के 3-4 साइक्लोन जो 2024 में हुए हैं, 25 तो अभी खैर शुरू ही हुआ है साइक्लोन सीजन के हिसाब से, तो उसमें प्रैक्टिकली लॉस ऑफ लाइफ ज़ीरो हो गया है। तो जो हमारी साइंटिफिक फोरकास्टिंग एजेंसीज़ हैं, उन्होंने एक बहुत कैपेसिटी बिल्ड की है। तो फ्लड के बारे में और साइक्लोन्स के बारे में हमारा प्रेडिक्शन काफ़ी हद तक एक्यूरेट है। ठीक है, हम लोग हमेशा जो है आईएमडी का मजाक बनाते रहते हैं कि आईएमडी कहेगा बारिश होगी तो डोंट टेक अ अम्ब्रेला, और अगर वो कहेगा कि सनी रहेगा तो टेक अ अम्ब्रेला। वो मजाक बनाना अपनी जगह है, बट ऑन द होल अगर हम देखेंगे तो प्रेडिक्शंस की हमारी जो एक्यूरेसी है बहुत बढ़ गई है, बहुत अच्छी हो गई है। बट दो चीज़ ऐसी हैं जो नेचुरल डिज़ास्टर्स में, वो है हमारा अर्थक्वेक और वो है लैंडस्लाइड। इसमें हमारे पास भी नहीं है और पूरी दुनिया में नहीं है कि कोई आदमी प्रेडिक्शन कर सके। इसमें इस हॉल में 90% इंजीनियर्स हैं, तो यू विल अप्रिशिएट कि ये कहना आसान है कि जल्दी होना चाहिए, बट जगह टेक्नोलॉजी अवेलेबल ही नहीं है। सारे लोग लगे हुए हैं, कोशिश हो रही है, कल हो जाएगा तो बहुत अच्छी बात है, आज की तारीख में नहीं है। तो उसके लिए हमें तैयार रहना पड़ेगा, पॉइंट नंबर 1। सेकेंडली, जब ये दोनों डिज़ास्टर्स होते हैं, लैंडस्लाइड में बड़ा अच्छा काम आर्मी ने किया मैं भी वहाँ मौके पे 3-4 दिन था। जो बेली ब्रिज आप लोगों ने इस्टेब्लिश किया वाकई उससे कनेक्ट हो गया, जो दूसरी तरफ मुंडकाई विलेज था। बट आप लोगों ने देखा होगा 300 से ज़्यादा लोगों की वहाँ डेथ हुई। एंड देयर वर जस्ट 2 विलेजेस, 2 गांव थे जो हिट हुए। कोई लंबा चौड़ा इलाका नहीं था कि पूरा शहर हिट हो गया। वायनाड में फ्लड आया, इधर ये जो विजयवाड़ा में फ्लड आया, प्रैक्टिकली शहर का 40% हिट हो गया। लॉस ऑफ ह्यूमन लाइफ वाज मच लेस। तो लैंडस्लाइड और अर्थक्वेक में जो लॉस ऑफ ह्यूमन लाइफ है बहुत ज़्यादा होता है। तो ये चीज़ हमें पता है। इसमें जो आदमी हिट होते हैं वो गरीब परिवार के होते हैं, ये भी प्रैक्टिकली फैक्ट ऑफ लाइफ है, क्योंकि जो रिलेटिवली रिच है, जो वेल ऑफ है, उसके जनरली मकान मजबूत होंगे, स्ट्रांग होंगे, दे विल बी एबल टू विथस्टैंड द प्रेशर, विथस्टैंड द ऑनस्लॉट। ये भी फैक्ट ऑफ लाइफ है। और एक और फैक्ट ऑफ लाइफ ये है कि हम सब जो हैं फाइनली हमारे परिवार परिजन जो हैं उन्हीं गांव में रह रहे हैं। तो ये हमें ध्यान रखना है कि जो भी आदमी विक्टिम है, जो भी आदमी हिट हो रहा है, वो हमारे ही किसी फैमिली से जुड़ा हुआ है, हमारे ही परिजन हो सकते हैं। आपका होगा, आपके किसी सोल्जर का होगा, किसी एसओ का होगा। तो वी हैव टू बी, वी नो दैट। तो एक चीज़ जो सबसे ज़रूरी हो जाती है वो जो हमें करना है कि हमें एक तो उन लोगों के लिए एम्पैथी होने की ज़रूरत है। तो जो 3 चीज़ें मैं एनडीआरएफ में अपने लोगों को बोलता हूँ वो मैं यहाँ रिपीट करना चाहूँगा। हमारी जो फोर्स है एनडीआरएफ, इट इज़ ए डेपुटेशनिस्ट फोर्स। सारे जो सीएपीएफ के लोग हैं वो यहाँ डेपुटेशन पे आते हैं। द डेपुटेशन टेन्योर इज 7 years। वी ट्रेन देम फॉर अबाउट 4.5 months एंड देन दे स्टार्ट वर्किंग एज एनडीआरएफ प्रोफेशनल्स। तो सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट चीज़ है चेंज ऑफ एटीट्यूड, और जो काफ़ी हद तक आप सबके लिए भी रेलिवेंट होगा, कोर ऑफ इंजीनियर्स के लिए भी, क्योंकि जब आप फौज में हैं तो एक एटीट्यूड आपका यह है कि एक दुश्मन एक गोली। जो हमारे लोग हैं बीएसएफ के, आईटीबीपी के, सीआरपीएफ के और भी फोर्सेस के, आसाम राइफल के, वो भी यही अप्रोच उनकी है जो उनकी बेसिक ट्रेनिंग का हिस्सा है। बट जब आप यहाँ आते हैं, एनडीआरएफ में कोई आदमी आता है, तो उसके लिए हम उसको सिखाते हैं कि बेटा आपको कोशिश करनी है आखिर तक। ये हमें पता है, अभी जनरल हसनैन ने बताया कि 38,000 डेथ ड्राउनिंग से पूरे साल में होती हैं। हर ड्राउनिंग केस में जिसमें भी हमें बुलाया जाता है, हम लोग जब तक पहुँचते हैं हमें प्रैक्टिकली पता है कि चांसेस ऑफ सर्वाइवल आर प्रैक्टिकली 0, बट हम कोशिश पूरी करते हैं। वायनाड में हमें दिख रहा था कि मामला मतलब प्रैक्टिकली नहीं हो रहा है, तो कोशिश पूरी करते हैं। तो एटीट्यूड ऑफ हेल्पिंग वो हम लोगों को अपने अंदर डेवलप करने की ज़रूरत है। अगेन मेरे पहले जो स्पीकर्स थे उन्होंने ट्रेनिंग और टेक्नोलॉजी का जिक्र किया, बिल्कुल सही बात है। मतलब एक चीज़ जो मैं हमेशा एग्जांपल देता हूँ, आप सारे 90% इंजीनियर्स हैं, सारे बड़े अच्छे परफॉर्मेंस रहे होंगे एकेडमिकली, बट आप में से बहुत से लोगों ने अपने बच्चों को पढ़ाने की कोशिश की होगी, और मुझे नहीं पता कितने आप कामयाब हो पाए। आप अच्छे स्टूडेंट्स हैं, इसका मतलब ये नहीं कि आप अच्छे टीचर भी होंगे। मतलब आई वॉज अ फेलियर, मतलब मैं बोर्ड का भी टॉपर था, आईटी का भी टॉपर था, डज नॉट मीन एनीथिंग। घर पे जब मैं बच्चों को पढ़ाने पहुंचा तो मैंने हाथ खड़े कर दिए, मतलब आई गेव अप, मतलब वो मुझसे पढ़ने को तैयार नहीं थे। तो आई बिलीव कि और जगह भी यही सिमिलर कहानी होगी। तो उसका यहाँ पे ये है कि आप अच्छे इंजीनियर हैं, आप अच्छे सीनियर ऑफिसर हैं, डज नॉट मीन कि आप अच्छे रिस्पॉन्डर हो सकते हैं। तो हमें अपनी रिस्पॉन्स करने की डोमेन नॉलेज को बढ़ाने की ज़रूरत है, और उसके लिए जैसे जनरल पांडे ने बिल्कुल सही कहा, पहले हमें ये तय करना होगा कि हमारा रोल क्या है। अगर हमें रिस्पॉन्ड करना है तो वी हैव टू लर्न, अभी डोमेन नॉलेज बढ़ानी होगी कि हमें रिस्पॉन्ड करना है और किन परिस्थितियों में रिस्पॉन्ड करना है। उसके लिए इक्विपमेंट चाहिए होगा, हर सिचुएशन में अलग इक्विपमेंट चलता है। मतलब बॉर्डर पे जब आप लड़ते हैं तो बंदूक चलती है, बट यहाँ एनडीआरएफ इज़ नॉट आर्म्ड। हमें अगर कहीं जाना होता है वैली में तो वी आस्क फॉर सिक्योरिटी बिकॉज वी आर नॉट आर्म्ड। हमारे हथियार क्या हैं? हमारे सॉज हैं, हमारे बोट्स हैं, हमारे कटिंग टूल्स हैं, दे आर आवर हथियार। तो ये हमें अपने आप को इक्विप करना होगा। और तीसरी होगी, उन इक्विपमेंट को यूज़ करते रहना होगा। जैसे कई बार मैं अपने यहाँ भी देखता हूँ कि इक्विपमेंट रखा है, बिकॉज हाई वैल्यू इक्विपमेंट है, 40 लाख का है, 50 लाख का है, तो ये है कि टूट जाएगा तो पता चले स्टोर में अलमारी में रखा हुआ है कि कोई सीनियर ऑफिसर आएंगे उनके डेमो में लगेगा। तो आई टोल्ड द गाइज, यार ये मेरे को दिखाने के लिए क्या फ़ायदा है? मेरे को दिखा के ठीक है मैंने शाबाश आपकी पीठ ठोक दी, दैट डज नॉट मीन एनीथिंग जब तक वो इक्विपमेंट फील्ड में नहीं जाएगा। और सबसे बड़ा एग्जांपल है वायनाड का। वायनाड में सबसे पहले जब हमारी टीम पहुंची तो उन्होंने क्या किया भाई, उन्होंने ये देखा कि जो बीच का ब्रिज है वो टूट गया है, उधर काफ़ी आबादी फंसी हुई है। तो उन्होंने बेसिकली जैसे हम लोग करते हैं जुगाड़ की टेक्नोलॉजी यूज़ करते हैं, पत्थर फेंका, वहाँ पे पब्लिक ने पकड़ा, उससे फिर उन्होंने एक पेड़ था जो आप लोगों ने शुरू के प्रेजेंटेशन में देखा था, बेली ब्रिज जहाँ इस्टेब्लिश हुआ, उस पेड़ पे उन्होंने वो रस्सी को बांधा। अब क्योंकि आम आदमी है वो इतने एक्सपर्ट नहीं है तो रस्सी इतनी टाइटली नहीं बंधी, तो जो हमारा पहला सिपाही गया था उसका नाम है अवतार गुजर, मुझे अभी तक नाम ध्यान है। वो बिल्कुल आप लोगों ने शायद में कुछ लोग जो गए होंगे शायद वीडियो देखा होगा, प्रैक्टिकली वो रस्सी को पकड़ के आधी बॉडी उसकी पानी में थी एंड वाटर फ्लो पहले दिन बहुत हैवी था, वो वहाँ पहुँचा और उसने फिर उसको प्रॉपरली टीदर किया पेड़ में वो रस्सी को, और फिर जो है ये सारे लोग यहाँ पहुँचे। अब इसमें जो इनोवेशन की बात जनरल पांडे ने कही है, मैं आपको इनोवेशन का एग्जाम्पल लाइव बताना चाहूँगा। वहाँ पे जो इस तरफ था रोड में एक पेड़ था जो कि रिलेटिवली पतला पेड़ था, तो उस पर इन्होंने बांधा, बट वो पतला पेड़ था तो जहाँ आदमी जाता है तो पेड़ आगे नीचे स्विंग कर रहा था। तब यहाँ पे जो कंपनी कमांडर था, इंस्पेक्टर था, देयर वर नो ऑफिसर देयर, उसने अपना दिमाग लगाया, वहाँ एक जेसीबी मशीन थी, तो वो जेसीबी मशीन पे उन्होंने वो एंड ट्राई कर दिया और उसका फ़ायदा क्या हुआ। अब उसका ये है कि जेसीबी को आपने नीचे कर दिया तो ग्रेविटी से, मैं इसलिए यूज़ कर रहा हूँ ये सारे साइंटिफिक वर्ड बिकॉज आप सारे इंजीनियर्स हैं, तो ग्रेविटी से उस तरफ से इधर आदमी आ सकता है, और जेसीबी को ऊपर कर दिया तो इधर से उधर ट्रैफिक, तो नाउ जो आपकी जिप लाइन है या रोप लाइन है वो टू वे ट्रैफिक ले रही है। तो ये इनोवेशन है, ये मौके पे इस ऑफिसर ने किया। और बाद में मुझे पता चला कि रोप गन उस बटालियन में थी, बट वो बटालियन में रखी हुई थी, साहब वो डेमो में काम आएगी। मतलब ये है कि वो रोप गन है बट वो सब मौके पे नहीं गई है। तो हमें अपने आप को ट्रेन करना है, अपने आप को इक्विप करना है, ताकि अगर हमें ज़रूरत पड़े, अगर हमारा ये फैसला है कि येस वी हैव टू रिस्पॉन्ड, और हमारा रोल क्या है, पहले हमें ये क्लियर हो जाना चाहिए कि वेदर वी आर टू रिस्पॉन्ड एंड वेदर वी आर टू रिस्पॉन्ड इन अ डिज़ास्टर। एक चीज़ जो हमेशा मैं एज एनडीआरएफ प्रोफेशनल हमेशा आई टेक प्राउड ऑफ द फैक्ट, एंड एचओडी साहब और जनरल हसनैन साहब तो ये सुनते सुनते बोर हो गए होंगे, बट मैं उनको दोबारा बोर करूँगा, ईज ऑफ रिस्पॉन्डिंग। मैं हमेशा ये कहता हूँ वी आर जस्ट अ फोन कॉल अवे। मतलब कोई भी एसएचओ अगर हमारे बटालियन कमांडेंट को फ़ोन भी कर देगा कि साहब हमारे यहाँ ये हो गया है, तो हम दो चीज़ पूछते हैं, भाई गूगल लोकेशन भेज दो और एक कॉन्टैक्ट नंबर भेज दो ताकि द टीम इज़ ऑन द वे, एंड वी इंश्योर दैट द टीम इज़ आउट ऑफ द गेट्स विद इन 20 मिनट्स। बस दो चीज़ हमें इंश्योर करनी है, 20 मिनट के अंदर टीम गेट के बाहर हो, उनकी जो भी कैंपिंग लोकेशन है। तो ईज़ ऑफ रिस्पॉन्डिंग ये है। मतलब हम ये नहीं कहते हैं कि भी आप हमें ये फॉर्म भर के भेजिए और फलाने जगह से आएगा और फिर मैं जो है हेडक्वार्टर भेजूंगा, हेडक्वार्टर एमएचए भेजेगा। तो वो हमें तय करना है कि ईज़ ऑफ रिस्पॉन्डिंग हम कैसे बेटर कर सकते हैं। बिकॉज अगेन जो मैं आपको बार बार बता रहा हूँ, मैं फील्ड में भी रहा हूँ एज अ पुलिस ऑफिसर, तब आपको रियलाइज़ होता है कि जो भी इंसिडेंट कमांडर है, डिस्ट्रिक्ट कलेक्टर इज़ द बॉस ऑन द स्पॉट। उस पर जिसके डिस्ट्रिक्ट में ये इंसिडेंट होता है, आप ये मान के चलिए कि उसकी तो एसएससी हो चुकी है, ही इज़ इन वेरी बैड स्टेट। उसको अगर आप एक्सपेक्ट करें, उसके पास अब कम्युनिकेशन बेटर हो गया है, तो मतलब आप ये मान के चलिए कि उसके पास 2 फ़ोन है, तो मतलब फ़ोन उसका रुकता नहीं है। हर सीनियर फॉर्मेशन उसको कॉल कर रहा है, अच्छा क्या हुआ, 10 मिनट बाद फिर अच्छा क्या हुआ, कितने मरे कितने बचे, मतलब वो बताते बताते मतलब उसको टाइम कहाँ है कि वो एक्चुअल काम कर सके। तो उस समय उससे हम लोग ज़्यादा चीज़ अगर एक्सपेक्ट करेंगे तो देन वी आर आस्किंग फॉर टू मच। तो हमें ये देखना है एज अ रिस्पॉन्डर कि हाउ वी कैन मेक हिज लाइफ ईजियर। और लास्ट चीज़ जो मैं कहना चाहूँगा वो ये है कि हमेशा कोई भी इंसिडेंट होता है तो हम लोग हमेशा कहते हैं कि अच्छा उसको ये करना चाहिए, उसको ये करना चाहिए, आईएमडी को ये करना चाहिए, एनडीएमए को ये करना चाहिए, एनडीआरएफ को ये करना चाहिए। बिल्कुल हम लोग कहें, एज अ सिटीजन वी हैव अ राइट टू आस्क एंड डिमांड फॉर सर्विसेज फ्रॉम अदर एजेंसीज, बट हमें ये देखना है कि हमें क्या करना है। दुनिया जहाँ की हम चिंता तो कर रहे हैं, बहुत अच्छी बात है, तो हम अपने लिए कुछ स्टैंडर्ड सेट करें। अगेन मैं अपना ही एग्जाम्पल लूँगा। वायनाड में हम लोग गए, हम लोगों ने रियलाइज़ किया, 2 एग्जाम्पल बताऊँगा, एक में तो जनरल हसनैन और राजेंद्र सिंह साहब आर फुली अवेयर ऑफ इट। तो वायनाड में हम लोग गए, हमने रियलाइज़ किया कि रबल में, स्लश में अगर डेड बॉडीज़ बरीड हैं तो उसको निकालने की हमारे पास कोई कैपेसिटी नहीं। तो क्या कर सकते हैं, टेक्नोलॉजिकली देखा, सब जगह एक्सप्लोर किया, तो ये हुआ कि भी कुछ कैडेवर डॉग्स को ट्रेन किया जा सकता है कैडेवर सर्च के लिए। तो वो हम लोगों ने ट्रेनिंग शुरू की। अभी ऑपरेशन ब्रह्मा में हम लोग गए थे म्यांमार, 60 पैरा का भी इनका वो जो हॉस्पिटल डिवीज़न गया था, वहाँ पे अभी एनडीएमए ने उस पूरे ऑपरेशन को रिव्यू किया तो एक चीज़ रियलाइज़ हुई जो कमी है, मतलब मैंने यही वर्ड यूज़ किए थे कि दैट वाज नॉट अ विन फॉर टीम इंडिया। हम लोग बात इंटर डिपार्टमेंटल कोऑपरेशन की, कोऑर्डिनेशन की करते हैं। अब ये है कि जब आपके पास मैसेज आया तब हम लोगों ने ऑफिशियल पासपोर्ट के लिए रिक्वेस्ट किया, तो उसके बाद ये रियलाइज़ हुआ कि ऑफिशियल पासपोर्ट बनने के लिए 7 से 8 घंटे लगे। तो टीम इंडिया कहाँ जीता भाई? हमसे पहले चाइना की टीमें पहुँच गई, हम बाद में पहुँचे। ठीक है, जो पॉलिटिकल इश्यूज उस कंट्री के हमारी कंट्री से हैं वो अलग है, मतलब वो हम मान सकते हैं कि उसको हम साइड में रखें। हमारी तैयारी ये होनी चाहिए कि अगर आपके पास अभी 10:15 पे मैसेज आए कि आपको दोबारा म्यांमार में जाना है, तो वी शुड बी रेडी टू बोर्ड द एयरक्राफ्ट इन नेक्स्ट 2 आवर्स, नेक्स्ट 4 आवर्स, नेक्स्ट 6 आवर्स। ये नहीं कि इसके बाद फिर मैं अपनी लिस्ट बनाऊंगा और फिर जो है वहाँ पे जो भी पासपोर्ट ऑफिसर है उसको लिस्ट भेजूंगा। तो उसका जो फॉलोअप हमने किया कि नाउ वी आर रिक्वेस्टिंग एमईए, उस मीटिंग में भी हम लोगों ने रिक्वेस्ट किया था और एमईए ने मान भी लिया है कि दे विल बी इशूइंग अस पासपोर्ट्स इन एडवांस, ऑफिशियल पासपोर्ट। तो हमें जब पता है कि ये टीमें हमारी शॉर्ट लिस्टेड हैं, वो इम्प्लीकेशन इंजीनियर कोर के लिए भी है कि अगर आपने तय कर लिया है कि आपको रिस्पॉन्ड करना है तो आपको ये तय करना होगा कि किस चीज़ में रिस्पॉन्ड करना है। डिजास्टर्स का नेचर आई थिंक इट्स नोन टू ऑल ऑफ अस, अगर नहीं है तो पता चल जाएगा, और उसके लिए क्या कैपेसिटी है वो हम लोगों को तय करना होगा। ये मैं एनडीएमए को, जनरल हसनैन राजेंद्र सिंह जी को धन्यवाद देना चाहूँगा कि ये बड़ा अच्छा ये आप लोगों ने इनिशिएटिव लिया है कि किस तरीके से आर्मी को और सारे जो स्टेक होल्डर्स हैं उनको एक प्लेटफॉर्म पे लाके आप नॉलेज शेयरिंग करा रहे हैं। ये डेफिनेटली एज अ कंट्री एज अ होल अप्रोच जो गवर्नमेंट चाहती है, दिस इज़ अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट स्टेप इन दैट डायरेक्शन, बिकॉज ये हम सब लोगों को क्लियर है, होना चाहिए कि पब्लिक जो है अब बहुत डिमांडिंग है। आज से 25 साल पहले, 40 साल पहले नहीं थी उतनी डिमांडिंग। अब पब्लिक की अवेयरनेस भी ज़्यादा है, पब्लिक डिमांडिंग भी है, और ये हमारी ड्यूटी भी है, रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी भी है और मॉरल काम भी है कि वी शुड बी रिस्पॉन्सिव एट द अर्लीस्ट। थैंक यू, जय हिंद।
Uttar Pradesh SDM kindly come on stage and present to the member, Shri P. Shan. Thank you, sir.
With session 1, I request all speakers of session 1 to kindly come up on stage and occupy their seats. This session will be chaired by Lieutenant General Raghu Srinivasan, Param Vishisht Seva Medal, Director General Border Roads. General Raghu Srinivasan took over as the 28th Director General of Border Roads in September 2023. Prior to his appointment as the DGBR, the General Officer was holding the appointment of Commandant, College of Military Engineering, Pune. He has participated in Operation Vijay, Operation Rakshak, and Operation Parakram during his illustrious service. He has a rich experience in serving along the border areas, especially Ladakh, Arunachal Pradesh, and Jammu and Kashmir. I now hand over the stage to the chairperson for introduction of speakers and the commencement of session 1.
Thank you very much. The former Chief of Army Staff, the Army Commander General Dheeraj Seth, General Hasnain, Shri Rajendra Singh, the ENC, Commandant CME, General Dimri, DG NDRF, General Harpal Singh and General Harpal Singh. I am extremely grateful for being called over here to chair the first session. As has been said before on this podium, everything which had to be said has already been said. I see before myself something very similar to what happens when you go for disaster management. You have 5 experts reaching the stage who you have never met, whom you know very little about, and you have no idea about what they are going to say. And however, we do expect a synchronized response. But I'm sure this is what this seminar hopes to address and will address. I have a few slides which, if you will permit me, we will go through. We need to understand why we are doing it. A quick look at how it evolved, disaster management. The Indian institutions, as you are aware, overarching, covered by the NDMA, the Indian Army, Border Roads, NDRF, and Aplethora of many others. Finally, the challenges. This is a factoid. Next. So, the world over, and this is not limited to us, are the major issues, which is we have slow and inconsistent duplication of effort, we don't have institutional memory and policy continuity, and there's a lack of a unified effort in this regard. And most importantly, almost every one of us who gets over there is trained for something else, has a different role, and this is a secondary responsibility apart from the NDRF. Next. In the world view, we need to look at the fact that a disaster response is always akin to a military operation, because you require resources, you require trained manpower, and you require coordination to get it going in a time-bound manner. So all these facts which have been put on the slide are what we are looking at in getting a unified and a very structured, measured, synergized, and effective response. Next. So this could be of interest in the sense that the world over, I think the first people who really looked at this was the Germans, and it is an engineer-based volunteer force. They have approximately 80,000 people, civil volunteers, who they train and who, as a community, come together in a response strategy for disasters. The Ministry of Civil Affairs in China, 1978, FEMA, and one would look at the United States having a disaster response mechanism much earlier than this. FEMA now has morphed. It has an overarching federal powers which give it the capability to act, giving it the logistics and the legal framework to respond to a disaster. The Japanese disaster mechanism in 1987 is significant because it is technology driven, and the real-time availability of first predicting and then synchronizing and coordinating the disaster response is could be emulated. Russia has something which they call Oxion, and in this they have a two-way app where, as was brought out, the Sachet app is something which allows you to come to know that something is happening. This is a two-way response in the sense that if you are there, you can respond back so that you are not only able to give information, you are also able to tell what the situation is. And the NDMA came up in 2005, so we are 20 years into the NDMA. Next. So this is about FEMA. I'll not go into it, but it basically talks about all the things which we also cover. Next. So national disasters post 2005. Next. I have just 2 slides, and this shows the fact that almost every year we are faced with national disasters of significance. Next. Next. So this was brought out by the ENC and other speakers, that what was the total cost that we're looking at and what is the total economic loss. So as the ENC very rightly pointed out, it is incumbent on us to take some action and move this forward. Next. So these are the points which I jotted down, which have already been covered, which talks about how we need to look at these challenges and find ways to mitigate them. Next. And finally, as I say, collaboration is the key. I think we are very grateful to the NDMA and all agencies which form part of the mitigation mechanism to get us all here together. Because as we say, when one teaches one, two learn. Next. This is what we were able to glean about the Sachet app. And like I said, the Oxion model could be looked at, where we have a two-way traffic, that someone who is already there, he is perhaps the best placed to be able to tell us what exactly is happening, and something can come out. Next. So what I have is a very distinguished panel here, which will talk about the individual institutional mechanisms of their respective domains. General Sudhir Bahl was my protocol senior at Staff College. He is one of the most erudite officers I know, and he has been serving in the Indian Army for more than 3 decades and has been now associated with the NDMA for quite some years. General Sohal, he will be talking about the Corps of Engineers response. He is presently the Chief Engineer, Southern Command. He has active experience in the Border Roads organization, where he was in Project Vijayak as the Chief Engineer in Kargil, where he did an outstanding job. From the Border Roads, we have Brigadier Prasanna Joshi, who himself was the Chief Engineer in Shivalik when we had the unfortunate incident of the collapse of the Silkyara tunnel, and now he is with our headquarters at Delhi. And he will be covering the aspects of the Border Roads organization. And we have Sri Mohsin Shahidi, DIG NDRF, who is a 1992 batch CRPF officer who has served overseas in Kosovo and the Ivory Coast, as well as in the National Security Guard. Without further ado, I will ask the first speaker to speak. I just have one request, that we'll keep it short. I have been provided a bell which I will use liberally, and we will keep it to about 10 to 12 minutes, and hopefully we will have time for question and answers.
Can you load my presentation, please? No, this is the presenters. Just a second. Okay, just a second. Look. I believe just a second. There is one. Our presentation makes sense. Just a minute.
Good morning and Jai Hind everyone, and with the permission of the chair, I'll straight away move into my presentation, wherein I will be giving you an overview of the functioning of the National Disaster Management Authority in the next about 12 minutes, which I propose to cover in the heads as shown. Right, so how does the NDMA come about? What are the structural linkages of NDMA with various other national level structures? Some of it has already been talked about today. I just put it together in a sequence, and three major cataclysmic disasters were mentioned. The 1999 super cyclone, the 2001 Bhuj earthquake, and the 2004 tsunami, in which we lost more than 10,000 people each. And that is what set the ball rolling
for the enactment of the National Disaster Management Act in 2005, which provides the legal framework and mandate for the National Disaster Management Authority as it is today. And we thereafter witnessed the shift from a reactive and a responsive approach to a proactive approach, addressing all facets of disaster management. It also put in place a three-tier structure at the national level, state level, and the district level. It is important for us to remember that the cutting edge is the district level. That is where the response actually takes place. We at the state and the national level are only there to facilitate the districts, DCs in executing the response. And in this structure, the National Disaster Management Authorities at each level, the National Disaster Management Authority, the SDMA and the DDMA are the ones which play a pivotal role in binding the various stakeholders together in getting policies, plans in place and ensuring their execution. Woven into this fabric is the multi-hazard early warning system of India, which looks at major hazards and has been talked about. Today we've come a long way, and thanks to these inputs, we are able to ensure that the losses that used to take place in the yesteryears are not there today. Various agencies have been given the lead ownership of providing early warning. For example, tsunami lies with the INCOIS, and avalanche warnings are given by a defense institution, the DGRE, the erstwhile SASE. In this three-tier structure, at the national level is the NDMA and of course NIDM and NDRF. I will speak a little more about the NDMA structure as a whole. It is structured in a manner to take care of all the four different facets of disaster preparedness, mitigation, response, and capacity building. The Honorable Prime Minister is the chairperson, and we have members of the NDMA who are assigned the responsibility to take care of each of these facets. Within the framework for functioning, the NDMA makes sure that it aligns itself with both the global frameworks as well as national framework, in which the Prime Minister's 10-point agenda, which General Hasnain spoke about, is an extremely important guiding pillar, as also the Sendai framework, which is going to, which we had a recent midterm review and which will expire in 2013. Prime Minister's 10-point agenda, multifaceted, covers the entire gamut of various aspects of disaster management. And if you look at it, whether you're talking of women leadership and empowerment, whether you're looking at taking care of the differently abled, the weak, whether you're looking at technology, whether you're looking at making use of social media, it has it all. And the NDMA has endeavored to incorporate this in its plan and its guidelines. And I would urge all of you to kindly go through this in detail and have a look at it. The Sendai framework is another very important benchmark for disaster management as a framework, which you must all be aware of. So it is a continuation of disaster risk reduction programs, and Sendai framework was enacted in 2015, and you had a number of goals. The primary goal being to reduce the fatalities, ensure early warning reaches everyone, and reduce the economic loss. However, when we did the midterm review, what happened was, what we found, the risk is outstripping reduction. So the number of disasters is actually increasing. Growing number of people are being affected, and losses remain high. Sort of point at which we need to pause and think, what are we doing is right. But the plus point is increased global networking. Now I'll come to the functioning of the National Disaster Management Authority. It is, like you saw, structured to take care of all the various facets of the disaster management cycle. And its vision, therefore, is aligned with this structure, which is to build a safe and disaster-resistant India through prevention, preparedness, and mitigation. Now, as far as the functions of preparedness and disaster response are concerned, the NDMA focuses on formulation and implementation of national policies and ensuring that strategic and other resources are available to responders to respond effectively. As far as response is concerned, it has a crucial role to play in multi-agency coordination and enforcement and validation of various plans. To this effect, the NDMA has laid down a large number of guidelines and policies, starting from the APEX document, which is the National Disaster Management Policy, and then the Disaster Management Plan, and guidelines which span specific hazards and also cross-cutting themes. National Disaster Management Plan itself is a tool to ensure coherence between the various co-terminus agreements that I mentioned about. The Sendai framework, and of course we have the Sustainable Development Goals and the climate change. In addition to that, it is also a vehicle for ensuring that Prime Minister's 10-point program is being incorporated in on all various disaster management related activities in India. For ensuring that these plans and these guidelines are fully implemented, adequate provisioning of funding has been made, and for which the 15th Finance Commission has provided funding through two vehicles. One is the NDRMF, the National Disaster Mitigation Relief and Mitigation Fund, and the state level funds. And it is very heartening to note that the provisioning of these funds has actually gone on multiple times from the previous years. We talked of ensuring coordination between various agencies that NDMA does, and a prime example is the Silkyara tunnel collapse and rescue thereafter in November 2023. Large number of options, large number of agencies employed, multiple approaches being adopted, more than 30 agencies were involved. And all this was made possible through the coordination by the NDMA. And this is a prime example of how the NDMA discharges its function of coordination and ensuring all of the government approach. I would like to take a minute here and talk about the framework that the NDMA has also put in for handling of industrial and chemical disasters, because it's of particular interest to the Corps of Engineers. So the first step is major accident hazard units have been identified, and the states have thereafter ensured that these industrial units where an accident can have a major impact have an independent on-site emergency plan. They have the required people who are trained, and there's a mutual aid scheme available between various agencies, industries located in that particular area. And subsequently, of course, they ensure that the third-party audit is carried out every year. Response is a calibrated response, because the endeavor is always to restrict the impact of such an accident on-site. However, if the response goes off-site, that is where specialists get involved, which is the NDRF, armed forces, etc. And of course, that is where we have a role as a Corps of Engineers. HADR operations is another aspect of the functioning of NDMA, which is very important. And just to put this in perspective, HADR operations are actually only a part of the disaster management cycle, wherein they span the area of preparedness and post-impact response. We have been taking care of coordinating this aspect in detail at the NDMA. And Brahma, which was spoken about, the earthquake in Myanmar, a horrendous earthquake, 7.7 magnitude, followed by an aftershock of 6.4. The response was coordinated by the NDMA, and of course, the executing agency was through the MEA. And despite the shortcomings mentioned by the DG NDRF, within a day we had search and rescue operations commencing and a field hospital was set up. The NDMA has also, as part of its other functions, set up key mitigation programs covering all types of hazards. And just a snapshot of what has been done in the cyclone risk mitigation project. And the success is there for all of us to see. 0 fatalities in cyclones like Biparjoy. The Aapta Mitras community response was spoken about. We have been training and empowering the citizens, and in the first phase, 1 lakh have been trained. And in the second phase, we are taking advantage of volunteer agencies like the NCC to train another 2,40,000 volunteers. School safety program, community awareness programs. Certain important initiatives was preparedness, integrated disaster response, incident response system, common operating protocol, etc. Why is incident response system important? Because large number of stakeholders involved, all of us need to work under a common platform. So it's important for us in the armed forces to understand this incident response system, that this is a system in which you have a responsible officer who is in charge of the complete incident and the incident commander who executes the response on ground. I would urge all of you to have a greater look at it on the NDMA website. Common alerting protocol would be spoken by my colleague further. In brief, what it does is it takes alerts from alerting agencies, gives them to SDMAs who are able to send out targeted alerts which come through various media, including your mobile and on Sanchet app. For example, if there is a flood in a particular area, this area is made into a polygon and all the mobile numbers in this polygon will be captured and the alert message will go to these people, even if you come from outside. Extension of emergency response, another initiative in which you've got One India, One Number, 112 is being established. Disaster related calls will also be routed through this. Resource visibility, very important. So the NDMA through NIDM has got the India Disaster Resource Network, and I think it is time that the Army also looks at having its non-classified resources mapped on this idea. Mock exercises, symposiums like this one, we've been looking at enhanced scope, not only when we talk of One India, One Disaster, One Response. This is the platform through which we are trying to achieve. And Durg Vishwas, numerous other symposiums, state level exercises have been carried out to this effect. These are just a few snapshots. A positive outcome, I'd just like to highlight this, Sikkim GLOF. Due to the mock exercise, we played this situation. We were able to have ITBP based early warning system in place, which actually saved hundreds of lives. To conclude, there are a large number of challenges that we face, but the opportunities also exist in terms of enhanced technology, integration, collaboration, and community involvement. And under these heads, we should be looking at various things. Community engagement, we are looking at cell broadcast coming in for improving our warning system, for leveraging technology. We need to be looking at modeling. Our NAVIC chip, when it comes in, it will improve communications and of course, with the new Disaster Management Act, the SDRFs are going to be strengthened and the urban authorities, disaster management authorities are going to come in place. And finally, disasters we would like to mitigate. With climate change, it is difficult to predict where a disaster will come. Things are happening where they never happened before. The response remains important, will continue to remain important. And therefore, coordinated response is sine qua non. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, we now have a group photograph already today. I request the nominated dignitaries to kindly proceed towards the entrance of Saratoga for the same. All attendees can
Okay, ready, sir. Small zoom.